much did it cost, Asa?
What did you say your name was?
$5,000 for 17 acres in Boone County, you know. Well, in fact, all my life campaigning, when I drove to Georgetown with that check, it's in there, that ACE's certified, William Fitzgerald said we can pay it. All my years of campaigning, that's the first time in my life I got dog bit walking to the door. I actually drew blood on my leg, and here I'm walking with a check for $5,000 and my leg is bleeding. I smiled and say, "Thank you, Miss Hans. Here, you give me the deed and I'll give you the check." And I want to say, "No, I'd like to sue you for dog." It's the only time I got dog bit in my life was buying the land for Big Bow Park. So I shed blood for Big Bow. Oh, golly. And so, Asa, help me out. I'm running out of steam.
Okay.
Okay, say so.
Through the years, and I don't remember when I didn't know Bruce Ferguson. We were little guys together. My mother and his mother were great friends. His mother was one of the most remarkable women that any of us ever knew. She was really the real thing. And my mother just loved her, and they'd been friends forever. So naturally, Bruce and I were friends. He had, you just sit here and blush if you want to. Hang on, okay? And don't interrupt me, all right?
No, now he does this. He would do this in the courtroom too, so be careful.
Okay, all right. He always had an aptitude and an attitude which made him unique. When he was a little boy, well, when he was a teenager, he would think of things that needed doing and he'd get it done. And I was busy with things. I've always been busy. I've always made lists. Even when I was a little guy, I made lists like an idiot. I still have it. It's a neuroses, I think. I used to write down Monday morning, wipe mother's clothesline before she hangs out the clothes. Like I wouldn't do that without a note. Anyhow, that was about the extent of my goal for the day, while he was thinking of some cause to follow and pursue. I graduated from the University of Kentucky in 1953 and started practicing law, and it took a while to get going. But in 1955, I got a call, and I've had several of these through the years, from Bruce Ferguson. The bottom line of the call was this: Asa, the county owns 2 acres down there in the heart of Big Bone. And I'm not talking about the town, I'm talking about the area. You're one of the few people, he said, who has an awareness of the international and national significance of Big Bone Lick, the springs in Kentucky. He said, that needs to be a park. It should not be where it is, the way it is. It needs to be a park. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's great. That sounds like a fine idea. But then he says, the county owns 2 acres. If we can acquire options on other acreage, first, it's like making tiger stew. First, you catch the tiger. He said, first we'll get the options. I said, do you have any idea how we can exercise these options? Do you have any money? No, I don't have any money. Well, where's the money going to come from? Well, let's worry about that when the time comes. So he and I started to work getting options. Now, mind you, that means getting in a car and going to Big Bone and getting out of the car and immediately introducing yourself to chiggers. Big Bone Lake was famous in those days for weeds, horse weeds.
Tallest horse weeds in the world.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, 2 stories tall.
Oh, yeah, enormous. And every horse weed down there had a chigger lurking, ready to seize you. Now, I don't know how many of you city folks are unfamiliar with chiggers, but you have them 3 or 4 days and nothing itches quite like one. Anyway, we went down there. Evening after evening after evening. Weekends and other times. And the problem was, you don't just walk up to a Boone Countyan in general, and a Big Bonian in particular, and start a conversation that's going to get you anywhere. You've got to make all kinds of small talk. You've got to listen to things that mean absolutely nothing and have nothing to do with why you're there. And you know exactly the particular people we're talking about. We would talk to them everybody was that way, but this couple, they were so glad to have visitors.
Alonzo and Lucy?
Yes, Alonzo and Lucy O'Ward. I should found out. I'm trying to be like the lawyer, not tell secrets. They were glad we came because we were the only visitors they had, and they were glad when we came back, and came back again, and came back again, and came back again. Every time we would take the option with us, and every time they were very cordial, but we could never quite get them over the edge.
They were afraid we'd leave and quit talking.
Oh.
They didn't want to sign. They didn't want to get rid of us.
No. Well, this went on forever. But lo and behold, by the time the smoke cleared, now I'd prepared the options, because that's my world. I'm a lawyer. We had the options, and there we were. And we ended up getting a lot of options, which I'll mention in a few minutes. But right now, I've got to tell you about J.D. Moore.
Oh, brother.
J.D. Moore owned a saloon store in Big Bone. J.D. Moore was very intelligent, had a good IQ, and
Supposed to go to law school in the UK.
he's supposed to have gone to law school and graduated, but decided he didn't want to be a lawyer.
His fiancée jilted him.
That's
But for
right.
another, oh, it's always a woman. J.D. He was jilted and gave up being a lawyer, decided to become a drunk.
There are certain downsides to that decision. Anyway, J.D. was intelligent and everybody knew it, but he took eccentricity to a new level. So we were sitting in his store, talking to J.D.
Salute.
Is what?
Salute.
Saloon, I'm a saloon.
He sold a loaf of bread and
Well, he had some bologna, and I wouldn't have eaten anything he sliced for
it
all
was
the money in the
prehistoric.
world. Yeah. Anyhow, we're sitting in there talking to J.D. and finessing him, manipulating him into
Signing him
the
up.
option. Well, J.D. was like a real savvy poker player, and he let us just do what we did. And anyway, the colorful part of this was the evening we were there when he made himself a sandwich, and he was sitting at a table in his saloon-store, and there he was eating a sandwich, and the dog was beside him, a fine dog, of course. He'd give the dog a bite, then he'd take a bite, he'd give the dog a bite, he'd take a bite. And I thought,
The dog lived.
yeah. Bruce, what on God's earth have you got me into now? We ended up, believe it or not, with options for 450 acres. Huge. To show how much we'd work, how hard we'd work. Well, that was like a wish list. There was no way in the world that we could ever buy that much land. However, we had the 2 acres from the county, which the county already owned, and Judge Cropper, a gentleman, if ever there was one, but still the boss of the county, knew he could give us that if we could make other things happen. So we kind of zeroed in on the Hans property, And we decided if we could just get this, which was nearly 18 acres, if we can get it and pay for it and give it to the state,
You're stuck.
the state's going to have to take it. Now that's naivete in the nth degree. For example, Henry Ward. Because the state parks must pay their own operating expenses, in large measure, emphasis has been placed on the many revenue-producing facilities and operations and the profit, blah, 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 blah. In other words,
This won't make money.
he thought like you were supposed to, I suppose, but it was the way we wanted him to think. So Bruce, we knew we had to have some money. You can't buy that Hans property without some money. Now, mind you, in the middle 50s, you could get a loaf of bread for a quarter, so $5,000 was a lot of money. A home in Walton, average home sold in Walton for around $7,000 to $8,000. And some of you remember that. I've been married longer than some of you have been alive. But in either case, how do you get that kind of money? Well, I don't like to raise money. I don't like to solicit for anything. I feel uncomfortable. Bruce nothing phases him, or didn't in those days. He was really frisky in those days. I was 25 and he was 26, and he was full of, vinegar and vim and all that. Yeah, anyway, Bill Fitzgerald was important. William Fitzgerald was a terrific man. He was an informal historian who was the real thing. And he was the mayor of Florence, for heaven's sakes. When the Florence City building was that wooden building which has been torn down, which had been a school, had it not? That's all they needed. Florence was composed of Main Street. Florence was composed of Main Street and a few side streets. And when I graduated from high school, Florence had a population of 500 people.
Walton was the biggest town in the county.
Walton was the largest city in the county and had a population of less than 1,000. Things have changed. But in either case, Bill Fitzgerald was a real supporter in every way that really counted. So was Bob Ellis, the reporter for the Enquirer. His is that home this side of Burlington, which looks like Mount Vernon. When he died, he left it to the county, and it's now something nice. And Ellis Crawford of the Behringer Museum, and now is the Behringer Crawford Museum, as well it should be. It's hard to describe guys like Ellis Crawford without sounding like you're exaggerating. He was intelligent. He looked intelligent. He was gentle and smart and able and learned.
Without a formal education.
Yeah, he was self-taught.
Right, Janine?
Yeah, correct.
He had a mind like a steel trap. He read something and he remembered it. I can tell stories about him, and all of them would sound flattering, and every one of them would be true. Great guy. So we had people like that. And the politician side of things was, of course, Judge Cropper, and not the least of which was Bruce's dad, Walter Ferguson. But Walter was pretty savvy too, and he had to be careful for reasons that made sense, what he did and how much he did. So we needed money. And different ones have been attributed to this idea, but the idea came pure and simple from Bruce Ferguson, and I don't know that to be a fact. And he said, we can have the school kids raise the money. And I said, Bruce, that's the craziest thing I ever heard of. He said, we'll let them have a day. The winner of the contest will have a day of, now we're not